Lupo Kickass RGBW LED video light panel. And I'm not joking with the name, Lupo actually called it Kickass. Now, to be perfectly clear, Lupo sent this to me for free and I don't have to return it. But they haven't had any say in this review whatsoever, and so I will give you my honest opinions about it. But let's unbox it and compare it to some of my existing light panels. Being a review sample, my product arrived in a plain cardboard box. And when I opened it, the first thing I saw was a personalised card with my name on it, which is a very nice touch that I appreciate. But I won't let that sentiment affect this review. Underneath that is everything that you'd get in a full retail model. There's some safety literature, including a QR code to download the manual, a USB-A to USB-C cable, a plastic diffuser, a ball head that feels quite sturdy for a bundled accessory, and then there's the unit itself. It's a small but quite weighty panel, chunky, and built from what feels like very strong plastic. The rear has a small display with 3 menu navigation buttons underneath it, a USB-A port, 3 rotary dials for adjusting intensity, hue and saturation, a slot for a Sony NP-F style battery, and a power switch. There's a USB-C port on one side, along with a 14.8 volt DC power input, which you could use with a DC power supply or a V-mount battery with a D-tap cable adapter. And there's a standard 3/8 of an inch threaded hole on 3 out of its 4 sides for mounting. Although, if you choose to use the supplied diffuser, the screws to secure that will occupy 2 of those 3 holes. Now, there's no power supply, D-tap cable or battery included in this package, but I think most people this panel is aimed at will probably have NP-F batteries lying around anyway, and if not, it can be powered via its USB-C port from power bank, which is very useful. But the light output is reduced slightly if powering it over USB. Now, I'm used to using small LED light panels that switch on instantly. So I was taken aback when I initially inserted a battery, flipped the power switch, and then had to wait a good 5 seconds or so before it booted up. For a brief moment, I thought I might have got a faulty unit, but actually, this is just the way it operates. And speaking of operation, in standard CT or colour temperature mode, you can dial in a white colour temperature of between 2800 and 10,000 Kelvin. And there's additional control of green and magenta to help you match it to other lights you might also have. In full RGB mode, you can dial in almost any colour you fancy, and the easier to use HSI mode, you can just cycle through the colour spectrum and tweak the saturation. It also has some built-in preset colours and some handy effects for simulating things like a cop car or paparazzi. Now, its rated output for a unit of this size is very high, 2100 lux at 1 meter. It has a colour rendering index or CRI rating of 96 and a TLCI rating of 98, which in layman's terms means it should be very bright and render colours accurately. Now, I don't have the equipment to back up those numbers with my own independent scientific tests, but what I can tell you is that it avoids making my pale skin look green in a way that some cheaper LED lights sometimes can. And it's also possibly the brightest panel of this size I've ever seen. Whoa! But one thing is immediately apparent. It has an incredibly narrow spread, which is very useful for some things, but far less so for others. Most LED light panels, like my Boling P1, have a broad spread of light that's great for flooding a background with colour in a tight space, like this, and that's exactly how I'm using mine now. Equally though, that broad spread makes it very difficult to use as an accent light, where controlling the light's spill onto the rest of your scene is important. This Lupo Kickass panel is the exact opposite of that. It's brilliant as a portable accent or hair light, but even with the supplied diffuser, which incidentally I don't like, it's cheap looking and a pain to take on and off with the screw mounting system. Even with that attached, it's still not going to evenly wash a scene with colour unless you have considerable distance between it and the target area, and by then you've lost much of its intensity anyway. It seems each cluster of LEDs has a lens in front of it that really focuses the light forward, and that helps boost its measured output. and probably explains some of where it gets its silly name from. Now I have an admittedly older now and much cheaper, though similarly sized, Aputure 198, which looks to have a lens on each of its LEDs in a similar fashion, although not the same, to the Lupo. But it's nowhere near as effective at cutting down that beam angle, and it's also nowhere near as bright. It also doesn't have full RGB capability, and the Lupo also seems to cast fewer shadows. I also have a much larger GVM50 RGB panel, which only serves to highlight how different the Lupo Kickass panel is to almost everything else. Being a much bigger panel, the GVM can easily wash an area with bright colour where the Lupo can't. But you've almost no chance of controlling that wash of light on the GVM effectively, even with its built-in barn doors. It also lacks the Lupo's portability and far superior build quality. They are completely different animals. And I think that's a good summary for this review. This Lupo Kickass panel is quite different to other LED lights. It's a very well built product, and as an accent or hair light, it will easily find a place in my kit bag. And it'll be especially useful for those wide shots where its extra power lets you position it far enough away to be out of frame. Plus it doubles as an effects panel when you need it to. But if you want to flood a wide area with light from a short distance, you should look elsewhere. If you'd like to purchase one of these Kickass panels, Lupo have provided a discount code for you to use in their online store. Just enter JULI5 to get 5% off. Now I get no benefit from that, so there's nothing fishy going on here. It'll just save you a bit of money. I'll put the details to that in the video description so you can easily come back to it later. I'm almost done here. I just want to quickly announce that I'll be back shortly with a new series on music production skills. I'm working on a real-time composing format with multiple camera angles and a live audio feed from everything in this studio. So anything could happen, including embarrassment and total humiliation on my part. But it should be fun, and maybe we'll all learn something. So please subscribe so you don't miss that, and you don't miss any other film and sound production related content on this channel. I'd appreciate it if you liked what you saw today, that you give this video a thumbs up, and if you have any questions or feedback, then please let me know in the comments. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.